There is a stigma around STIs. Even with perfect hygiene, people are still getting UTIs, especially Black women have been subjected. They've been used, they've been studied, they've been cut open and experimented on without consent. Period pain is normal, but period pain that interferes with your daily life is not. What if the reason you haven't gotten answers isn't because your body is broken, but because the system was never built to listen to you? Welcome to G Chats. Hi everyone, welcome back to G Chats with your host Gianna Jara here in the G Spot as always every single week. And today's episode is a very casual one. We are sitting down, we are chatting, and what we are chatting about today is my journey into becoming a biomedical engineer. This is something that honestly I see asked quite often as of lately on my TikTok. People will stumble upon my videos, my educational videos, and they're like, oh my God, you're so cool that you have a biomedical engineering degree. Please talk about it. I'm thinking of doing it. So I want to talk about biomedical engineering, how I got into it. And I want to share a little bit then of how I got into women's health and how I now am the founder and CEO of With Meraki Co. So let's go back to my childhood. So growing up, I was a very artistic kid. Like I loved art. I still love art. I've always loved art. And I just literally for as long as I can remember, I was one of those kids that like beads. Oh my God. My mom, not even every holiday, like Christmas, birthday, the only thing that I could ask for that I wanted was like one item. And I was like, it has to be more beads. And I would make keychains, bracelets, necklaces, earrings. Like I loved creating jewelry. Oh my God. When I started getting birthday money, when I got older, I would go to like Kmart and I would buy jewelry from Kmart and I would take my dad's pliers and like reconstruct it, rip the beads off of different earrings and like make my own with the wires that came on a different pair of earrings. So I just like loved creating things. I was super creative. I loved painting. I loved art. I loved makeup. I was doing the classic thing of like, I would have Aquaphor, for example, or Vaseline, take an eyeshadow kit. If you guys remember from like JCPenney when we were little, there was like that thing and you pull it open and then there were like tiers in the makeup kit. And the top one was like a palette, an eyeshadow palette of all different colors of the rainbow, every shade of green, every shade of blue, every shade of red, just literally lining the top part of this contraption. And you open that up and then there's a layer of like blushes and a layer of bronzers, a layer of glosses, like lip products, lipsticks. Like it was literally one of those kits that I bought from JCPenney the one year with my birthday money. And I would do the thing that I feel like a lot of people did. I would take Aquaphor and I would like scrape, let's say like the red eyeshadow. And then I would take a little bit of the pink and a little bit of the white and I would mix and make my own custom lip gloss that fit my skin tone. Like I thought I was a scientist, a formulation specialist. That's what I was cooking up and doing when I was a kid. I don't know. I was always, since I was young, like just very into like creating things. And you guys might think like, Gianna, that's not an original experience. I did that too. That's my point, is that like, if you did it as well, just creative and playing around. I think like growing up, a lot of people think like little girls play with dolls. I wasn't really into like dolls. I mean, I had Barbies, but I wasn't really into dolls. I wasn't into stuffed animals. Again, these are things that like I had because I think naturally my parents thought she's a little girl. She's going to like dolls. She's going to like stuffed animals. So yeah, I had them. As I got older, like nail polish was my thing. Like even for example, my little cousins, like one of my little cousins loves drawing. Like she is a drawer. Like she loves drawing, but she doesn't really play with makeup or play with nail polish. I was the opposite. Like I did like drawing, but playing with nail art was what I was into. So I would like paint my nails and I would watch, there was like I Love Nails and like different YouTube pages that I would watch. And like I was creating floral designs on my nails. I even would like paint things with nail polish and create different designs with the nail polish. All of that is to say that I literally loved art. Like I was just very artistic, very creative. My parents recognized it from a very young age of mine. Like they knew, yeah, she's into art. And the thing is like, you know, my parents thought, oh, that's cute. It's cute. She's into art. And they didn't really expect much out of it because I grew up in an ethnic home. I'm first generation Syrian American. My parents are Syrian. When you grow up in an ethnic home, I know a lot of people will resonate with this. My parents were like, oh, she's going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. Became an engineer. but not, I wouldn't say in the classic typical way. But the point is like, you know, my parents thought it was cute. They thought I was incredibly creative, were very proud of me, but just didn't think that I would do anything with that creativity. Like they were expecting me to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Something that I picked up on very early on in my life was that I loved helping people. Like I loved helping people, particularly in the scientific space. I always had a love for science. I remember I actually, in art class in the 4th grade, we had to like make this clay artwork thing, and it had to have some historical significance, right? And so people were just choosing like the Independence Day of the country that they're from and like things like that. I can't really take myself back to the day that I did this. I like vaguely remember this, and I still have the piece of clay at home, but I made a piece of clay and I referenced and made it all about how penicillin was first created and how penicillin was found in mold, and that was used to become an antibiotic. And I made my whole thing about that. That was really one of the first things where I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like there was something that we found that had scientific backing in, and we used it to help people. Like I loved that idea. I knew from then that I really did love science. I really did love what I thought was medicine, which it ended up being as I got older. I just loved that. Therapeutics, helping people in that way, in like a scientific way. For me, at like 10 years old, what does that ring a bell as? It rings a bell as a physician, a doctor. So I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. That's what I'm going to do. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, specifically a pediatrician. I loved children. I worked even in my adulthood. When I was 16, I worked part-time as a like playground instructor for a program for my city. So like I worked with kids for a really long time. I love just like being around children. I feel like I was always pretty like maternal, if you will. Maybe it's because I have a little brother, but also I feel like I'm maternal over my older brother too. I don't know. I feel like it just like is something that's inside of me. I am the middle child, but the only girl. I feel like I always just like was good with kids. I thought, okay, I'm gonna be a pediatrician. That's what I'm gonna do. And then as I was getting older and older, you know, middle school goes by, and then you're in your early years of high school. Something just about being a doctor is like, it feels like it's missing. At the time, you were able to start your children later. This is like back in the day, 05-ish time frame, and you were able to start your kids a little later. My parents started us later. They didn't know. Started me and my brothers later. So I graduated at 19 years old. I was not held back or anything. I just started kindergarten at a later age. So rather than starting kindergarten at 4 or 5, I was 6 when I started kindergarten. So I ended high school at 19 years old. I went into college at 19. And I just remember like at that point when I was like 16, my freshman year, and I was like getting older, I just like thought about doing school for like 12 years and where that would take me in my life. So right now I'm 27 years old. I would still likely be in residency at this age, or I would honestly just be getting into residency at this age. I started really thinking about it, and I didn't know if I could stick it out for the long haul, like if I really was dedicated enough to be a doctor when something felt like it was missing, right? My brother-in-law, my boyfriend's brother, he's a pediatrician. We talked about this a lot, and he was like, I genuinely think like more people could be physicians, but it's the dedication. Like it truly is an intense level of dedication that you have to put into school and into literally educating yourself and doing the residency and doing these things for so many years. And I feel like that is possible if you're truly in love with becoming a doctor. That just wasn't me. Something felt like it was missing. I was like, I don't know if I want to be a doctor. I don't. Because of that, I just was like, well, what else is out there for me? Like, what am I going to do? You get to high school and your parents are like, well, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to be a lawyer. Like, that doesn't interest me whatsoever. I don't want to be a doctor. Well, I do want to be a doctor, but I don't want to be a doctor, but something's like missing. I don't know what I want to do. And that was kind of like engineering. I thought like, literally in my head at the time, engineer felt like a mechanic. Like I thought engineers like fix things, which they do, but like at the time I didn't have a huge knowledge of what an engineer was. My grandfather was a civil engineer. He worked a lot with like roads. In my head, I was like, oh, you're like fixing roads and stuff. Like I don't want to do that. I just don't see myself doing that. But I loved medicine. I loved science. Something though was missing. And it wasn't until my sophomore year of high school when my mom was diagnosed with an aggressive stage of pre-surgery cervical cancer, we ended up talking to different team members at the hospital, and they all were explaining like different aspects of the device they were going to use to extract the abnormal cells from her cervix. And they talked about like bioengineering and biomedical engineering, and how there's like a lead team of biomedical engineers at the hospital, and they would like set us up in a meeting with them so that we could have a discussion, all of these things. And I heard biomedical engineer, and I was with my mom at all these appointments, A, because I'm the only daughter, and B, because we're Syrian, and so my mom's main language is Arabic. My mom's fluent in English. However, like there's medical terminology and things like that, and my mom just felt more comfortable to have me there, especially like I was excelling in school and things like that. Like I was a bright child. My mom's like, I want my daughter there with me, and I was like a good support system for my mom and an advocate too at such a young age. I went to all of her appointments with her, and while we were there and I heard biomedical engineering and I got to like asking questions, they told me that there was a team of biomedical engineers that I could speak to. Learning about biomedical engineering, learning about what a biomedical engineer is, was exactly what I needed. Like that was my aha moment, because once I met them and I learned about what biomedical engineering was, that's where I was like, oh my God, biomedical engineers create things to like help people in the scientific medical space, which is what I wanted. It was biomedical engineering. That's exactly what I wanted to do. I finally had a name to the title, like a name to the job. I knew what I wanted to do, and I thought medicine, help people, it's got to be doctor. But the thing that missed with doctors was I wanted to be like, someone has a diagnosis. Doctors are patient forward, right? They're with the patients and they're either diagnosing, they're running lab work and things like that. And I want to like fix that. I don't want to be like ordering tests. I don't want to be prescribing the medication. I almost want to be the one creating the medication. So that's where it felt like doctor didn't make sense, because I didn't want to be the prescriber. I wanted to be the maker. I literally didn't know what that would look like, right? I guess in normal terms, that would just be a scientist. Technically, biomedical engineers can be scientists. So that's ultimately what I wanted to be. You can be a scientist and study the environment. You can be a scientist and study formulas for road pavements, for agriculture. You literally can be a scientist in like so many different shapes and areas of the world. But mine was like medicine. And it's like, what do you call that? Medical scientist? I didn't know that. So in my head, I'm like, I guess a doctor. I don't know. But anyways, that's all to say that I found the world of biomedical engineering, and that was my aha moment. I was like, that's what I want to do. I pursued biomedical engineering. For those of you who don't know, I went to the Lehigh University. I love my school. One thing that I did do, so for those of you who are young and you're watching this, wanting to kind of like understand the process, I applied my senior year in the fall. So I had just started my senior year of high school, and I started applying to colleges, but mainly only one, and it was Lehigh. So Lehigh does this thing called early decision. They have early decision 1 and they have early decision 2. And a lot of universities do this, prestigious universities do this. So it's not uncommon, but I was like, I'm going to do ED1 because the acceptance rate at the time was much higher for ED1 than it was for ED2 or regular decision. And I knew that I wanted to go to Lehigh. And one of the things that I learned, and this is just like feedback for those of you who are young, who are thinking of applying to different universities, something that I learned is that universities like when you basically tell them or show them like, hey, you're my first choice. They like that. When universities know that you've applied to all the Ivy League schools and then you saved Lehigh last, they're like, who do you think you are? They don't like that. And I did know students at my high school who did do that, where they thought Lehigh University is going to be my safe school because the acceptance rate is a bit higher than Ivy Leagues. So I'm going to apply to all the Ivy Leagues and hope that I get in. And if I don't get into the Ivy Leagues, I'll apply to Lehigh. And I know students who did that and then got denied by Lehigh, because at that point they already accepted a lot of kids through ED1 and ED2, but then also they do their like vetting, like through college app. They can see that you apply to other universities, and that does make a difference to some degree. And so universities like to feel like, oh, I'm your first choice. They really do. There's a reason why early decision 1 has a higher acceptance rate, not because, oh, it's just like an easier format or anything. It's because they want to take the students who want to be at that university, who are saying, you are my first choice. If you guys don't know, early decision is a little bit binding. It's one of those things that like, if I apply to this school and I get accepted, I have to go there. The exception, I believe, now Please forgive me. That was 2018. No, fall of 2017. It is 2026. It's been nearly almost 10 years. So forgive me if my information is wrong. I apologize. I'm just candidly talking. I did not do research and prepare for this. I'm just candidly speaking to you guys. So with that being said, when we're talking about binding, my understanding is that if you apply to multiple universities for early decision one, which I think you can, you then can choose which one you want to go to, but you have to pick one. If I apply to Lehigh, I couldn't tell Lehigh, like just Lehigh, and then get accepted, tell them, no, I want to wait and see what happens with regular decision at UPenn. You can't do that. That's my understanding. So I do believe it is binding if you do early decision one. And that's exactly why they accept many students who do ED1 or ED2, because they know that those students are binding. They know that those students want to be there. They know that these students understand that if they get in, they have to go there. And that is what the university wants. They want people who want to be there. My advice is, like, if there's a university that you love, that you want to go to and you're certain about, I would prioritize that university and do early decision one. If you are someone who's like, I don't know what school I want to go to, I'm unsure, I don't have one that I'm like dead set on, that's different. Then you can do, I don't know if you can do multiple early decisions. I honestly, now that I think about it, I think it's just like one school that you can do ED for. But again, maybe it's changed. Maybe I'm wrong. Not 100% sure. I know a lot of students who just like did regular decision and then didn't get in because they applied to so many other schools, didn't get into like their dream Ivy League, and then tried to use Lehigh as like a safe school. And I've heard this with some Ivy Leagues too, right? They'll do like early decision at like Columbia or early decision at UPenn. And then they're like, oh, I didn't get in. Okay, then I'm going to try doing Dartmouth last. And then it's like, no, you saved us last. Like, we're not a safe option. So I would be careful with doing that. I applied to Lehigh early decision, got in for early decision one. So by December of 2017, I was graduating in June of 2018. December of 2017, I knew exactly where I was going. I was going to Lehigh University. I knew it. And that was it. My college search was done. So to be honest, my senior year of high school was so chill. I was not stressed about applying to colleges or anything because I worked on it throughout the summer. Junior year going into senior year, I worked on my applications. I did what I needed to do. I applied. I think the applications closed in September, and then I found out I got in December. So it was just very straightforward. Found out everything was like super relaxed after that. And then I started my journey at Lehigh. Went in, decided on bioengineering. Now, what I will say, and something that a lot of people should know, is that there are schools whose curriculum will specifically, and degree will specifically state biomedical engineering, and then there's bioengineering. The biggest thing that I advise you to do is when you're looking at the curriculum, you have to see the courses that are taken in that degree. And then you also need to understand what the degree consists of, right? What type of bioengineering is it? Because there are universities that offer bioengineering, but it's bioengineering in the agricultural world. One of the universities that I know does this is Purdue. Purdue has a bioengineering program, but it's more in the agricultural space. It is not biomedical engineering. There's other universities like Lehigh that offer bioengineering, but the bioengineering at Lehigh University is a medical grade coursework. So a lot of students actually used bioengineering as a pre-med track. So what they did was they came into Lehigh doing bioengineering because it sufficed a lot of the classes that they needed for pre-med. And then if they decided, oh, I don't want to go to med school, they still had a good degree, which was bioengineering, but it was very much in the like human anatomy, physiology world. It was not agriculture. It was not environmental. It was human biology. Obviously, I did my searching when I was like looking at different biomedical engineering universities. I didn't want to go to one that was like working on the environmental side of things or agricultural side of things because I wanted to work in human anatomy and physiology. Lehigh was a school for me. Johns Hopkins University was another one I looked at. Ultimately, I chose Lehigh University. That's what I will say. If you're into human anatomy and physiology, make sure that you look at the curriculum and you understand what that coursework is going to look like. My freshman year was tough. Like I had a really tough semester that first semester. Like I took calculus 1 my sophomore year of high school, and then I took calculus 2 my junior year of high school. And it's just so crazy to me because calculus in high school, like calculus 1 is like taught to you the entire year. But when you get to college, it's that class taught to you in the matter of 12 weeks. It's crazy. Like for Calc 3 to be condensed in that short of a time when I'm used to it being literally taught to me for 40 weeks. Like That's crazy. So Calc 3 literally slapped me in the face. Like, it was such a hard class for me. I was not prepared, and I was not prepared for how fast college is, like how fast paced the coursework is. And this is me taking AP classes in high school. Like, I took AP Calc 1, AP Calc 2, AP Chem, AP US History, AP World History. I took all the AP classes that you can name. I took so many in high school and I did well in them. But like, college is just fast paced. Like, it is just so fast. And it just shocked me, you know, and had my dorm with one of my best friends. We were living on campus. And I mean, like, my friend group split up from high school, like not split up, like actually like we stopped talking to each other, but just like we went to different universities. And so like I missed my best friends, and it was just hard to be away from like my friends. You go to school and you grow up with so many people. You go to school for all these years, and then you're like isolated on this university with brand new people from all over the world. It's like such a like whiplash that you get. And it was just like new to adjust to. It's a lot as a freshman. Like, it really is. And I struggled my freshman year. And then I was like, I need to pick it up. I got to get it together, because it was really hard and I didn't know how to adjust. And what I will say is, for any of you who do need advice, don't let a bad semester tear you down when you're in college. One of the things that I see from so many students is they tell me, oh my God, I'm struggling so bad in Chem 1. I'm never going to make it as an engineer. I'm like, guys, you are struggling in Chem 1. Struggling in Chem 1 does not define you as an engineer 5 years from now. I promise you, the real world is forgiving. Engineering, especially when you get into like bioengineering, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering. My younger brother's a mechanical engineer. He doesn't remember every single torque equation from his Mech E class 4 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He knows, oh, I have to do X, Y, and Z to determine what to do for this pipe, let's say. And if he doesn't remember the equation, he Googles it. The real world is, I want to say, forgiving, because there's a difference between memorizing shit and knowing your shit, right? Like, knowing certain things about, let's say, like drug therapeutics is, or like cellular biology is one thing. But then like knowing everything and memorizing a formula for X, Y, and Z, like that's a whole nother thing, right? For example, I worked in a lab where we grew cells in a single use vessel, right? We were making like these cells. And one of the things that we had to do was adjust a pH. Like, I have the knowledge to know what a titration is. Like, I know what a titration is. But if I needed to run titration calculations and I didn't remember the formula, I Googled it. I knew the concept, right? I knew that we had to control for pH. I knew that we had to control for temperature. I knew that we had to control for pace of it, like the time and stuff like that. Like, I knew the controls, you know? Those are big things. That showcases your knowledge when you're able to control for certain things. You're considering these different variables. That highlights your knowledge as like, oh, biomedical engineer, not memorizing a damn equation. It's the concepts that matter that you carry with you. And sometimes you might, on the first day of your job, you might not realize, oh, I need to do a titration. That's okay. You learn on the job and you'll be like, I remember doing titrations in chem lab. That's also okay. Like, that's fine. You learn these things as you go. So I feel like a lot of young students get so caught up in a world where they feel like they have to get out of college and know everything. And so when they're a freshman, they're a sophomore, they're a junior, and they're in a tough class and they're not doing well and they can't perform well on a chem exam, they think, that's it, I'm not going to be able to graduate. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And those classes are called prereqs for a reason. You need to stick it out of the prereqs. The chem ones, the chem twos, the bio ones, the bio twos, the orgo ones, the orgo twos, the calc 1, calc 2. I've taken them all. I passed them all. And one thing I will let you know is those classes are not useful. I don't use calculus in my day-to-day life. I don't use calculus. When I did take it, I was great at it, but I don't use it now in my day-to-day life. Like Calc 1, I did fantastic. Calc 2, a little difficult. Calc 3, I was like brain dead in Calc 3. There's classes that will just click for you, and then there's classes that don't click for you. Bio, sew my eyes shut. I could take a bio exam, I'll get an A on it. Me and bio meshed well. Chem, I was also decent at. Physics, brain dead at physics. You bring out springs to me and things like that, we don't click. Physics and me were a problem. I just didn't click. Does that mean that like I'm not worthy of being an engineer? No, but I think it's easy to convince yourself as a young student. Take a deep breath, because once you make it out of those classes, you start to get into the classes that do matter, the classes that do apply or give you a little eye opener to what your degree is. A class that was incredibly hard for me that I loved, that actually had something to do with my major, was fluid mechanics. Fluid mechanics had so much to do with biomedical engineering. One of our projects was actually designing a mechanical heart valve. That was like an incredible project to be a part of. Like designing a device that is put into the heart that replaces your biological heart valve, and it's a mechanical one that you run calculations for to make sure that a patient would survive and things like that. It's like insanely cool. It's hard. The class was hard. Fluid mechanics is arguably my hardest bioengineering class that I ever had to take at Lehigh. It was by far the hardest. It was the glimpse of like, oh, this is how you apply engineering principles to real world, real human situations and scenarios. I knew like this is what I wanted to do. It was a tough class, but your professors will see your passion. Your professors will see like, oh, this is somebody who wants to be a BME. Like they care about that. They want to see that. And you showing that, going to the office hours, making that known is what matters. Talk to the professors, work your butt off, stick it out. Because the prereqs are just that. They're the prereqs. My bioengineering class that I took, it was one of the first BioE classes that I took, which was engineering principles and physiology. There was a 1 and a 2. Both of them I loved, but the first one, it was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like we're applying engineering principles. Like this is so cool. And then the second one was even more cool, applying the principles and everything to the human body. That's where I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. It almost validated what I wanted to do. It's something that I think you need to stick through. Another thing to keep an eye out for is that at Lehigh University, for example, bioengineering offers 3 tracks. There's the biomechanics track. So it does go down a lot of the mechanical engineering field and getting you like classes in mechanical engineering, which is important because a lot of people who do the biomechanics are highly interested in working with companies that are into prosthetics and mechanical style medical devices. So those students, I know plenty of students who were on the biomechanical track of biomedical engineering at Lehigh, and that was because they wanted to work with prosthetics. Then there's the biopharmaceutics track, which is for people who were interested in drug delivery, molecular biology, and things like that, which is what I was interested in. And then there was the biocomputational side of things. 10 years ago at this point, I thought that it was, if I'm not mistaken, I thought it was called like bioelectronics, and it worked a lot with like microchips and stuff. I think they changed the name to biocomputational, and I do think that there's still like microchips and things like that involved. All of that's to say is there's different tracks that help give you additional classes in that track that aligns with what you're interested in. Like if you're interested in drug delivery, then you take some chemical engineering classes. So I had to take some chemi courses. That's just something to consider, that some universities offer different tracks to help you specialize in a certain area that you can leverage when you go to apply for jobs. Like if you want to apply to Stryker, for example, and work for a prosthetics company, you can say, hey, I was on the biomechanics track, so I took mechanical engineering classes, so I have the expertise. So rather than them just strictly hiring mechanical engineers, they can hire a biomedical engineer who has a concentration in the mechanical engineering principles. That is leverage that you can use to get you a job. I worked for a biomanufacturing company that manufactured vessels for all of the big pharmaceutical companies. So being on the pharmaceutical track was something that I leveraged, that I was like, I can get in the lab and run cell trials. Like I have the experience to do this. And that is exactly what I did. My time at my engineering job was me running cell trials. I had the experience to be in a lab because I understand the scientific biology of cells because I had the pharmaceutical, chemical, laboratory, cellular, molecular biology experience. So just things to note that you can leverage as you enter the workforce. As I started studying biomedical engineering my sophomore year, I started getting UTIs. And I told the story a lot. I'm not going to go on for too long about my UTI journey because that's a separate video, and I've done videos about my UTI journey. But once I started getting UTIs, it was late sophomore year and then junior year, the beginning of junior year. And something that I recognized was that I was taking classes where like topics from my own personal journey were coming up naturally in my education. So one of the things we were learning about was antibiotic resistance, for example. And at that point, I was resistant to 3 different antibiotics, 3 different types of antibiotics. I was resistant to ceflexin, macrobid, and Bactrim. And so that was one of those things where I'm experiencing this, I'm going through these UTIs, and then we're talking about it. We're talking about antibiotic resistance and how prevalent it's becoming. We're taking bioethics and we're learning about the overprescription of Valium back in the day to women and telling them that they have female hysteria and using tranquilizers to sedate these women. And we're learning about things of like how fragmented women's health is. We're learning about how birth control was tested on Puerto Rican women. We're learning about these concepts in these classes because I'm advancing in my degree, halfway through. So now at this point, I'm no longer taking the Chem 1s, the Chem 2s. I'm taking like courses that actually apply to what I want to do. And I'm realizing, healthcare is a bit fragmented, if not a lot fragmented. And I'm like, I want to change this. I'm resistant at this point to 3 different types of antibiotics. A specialist is telling me, okay, you're going to grow out of your UTIs. Everyone grows out of them. Once you get one UTI, you just keep getting them. You'll grow out of them. Don't worry. You will grow out of them. Just make sure that you're showering. Make sure you're staying hydrated, but you will grow out of them. I don't know why you keep getting them. You'll be fine eventually. In the meantime, I know you're resistant to 3 different types of antibiotics, but we're going to put you on 6 months of antibiotic therapy. You should be good. For many women, we do this. We either put them on 6 months of antibiotic therapy, or if they feel that their UTIs are linked to sex, we just tell them, pop an antibiotic pill every single time you have sex. At this point, again, I'm learning about these concepts. So I'm looking at the physician. I'm like, hold on. If I'm not mistaken, wouldn't a woman popping antibiotics every single time that she's having sex increase her risk of antibiotic resistance? If she's not on this consistent schedule of having sex, and let's say a woman has sex twice on a Sunday, she pops the antibiotics 2 times. Then what happens if she doesn't have sex till Thursday? She pops the antibiotic, but then she has sex on Saturday. She pops the antibiotic. Doesn't have sex for 2 more weeks. Pops the antibiotics. Last I checked, and I'm an undergraduate student, antibiotics don't work like that. Right? Had me questioning everything I knew about antibiotics, microbiology. I was like, what the hell? She's like, that's our methodology. That is what we do. Guys, to date, this is still a guideline that exists in many medical settings for women with recurring UTIs. That didn't apply to me. I just flagged it because I wasn't having UTIs that were linked to sex or anything. I was just struggling with UTIs that almost felt like they were never going away because I was developing resistance. There are guidelines where it's if you're someone who just keeps getting them, you go on antibiotics for 6 months. Or if you're someone who feels they're linked to sex, well, you take antibiotics every single time that you have sex. Neither one of these seem like the right approach. So I turned down the 6 months of antibiotics. Doesn't make sense to me. A prophylaxis of 6 months. I'm already resistant to 3 different antibiotics. What are you going to give me? Amoxicillin at this point? Amoxicillin is a worst case scenario for a UTI. So I'm like, what are you going to put me on? Truly, what are you going to put me on? Cipro? At this point, it was just so frustrating and I wasn't having an active UTI. So there's also nothing to culture and then resistance test. So it was kind of just we'll try something for 6 months. And that's awful. So many people go on antibiotics for 6 months and it ruins and destroys their gut microbiome, their vaginal microbiomes, their oral microbiomes. It destroys microbiomes across their entire body. I know people who have had severe lifelong health issues from being on antibiotics for so long. Antibiotics are so overused and overprescribed. And this isn't to demonize the scientific community and the medical community, because at my core, I'm a scientist. I will never, ever, ever, ever pretend that science isn't helpful with advancing human health and public health. It is. It absolutely is. But there are flaws in the system. It's fragmented. And we have to be okay with calling them out. And that was something that I was okay with. I was like, we got to call this out. And I remember talking to different professors, PhD professors at my university, research professors, and flagging this. And they agreed with me. It was really reassuring to know people I looked up to agreed with my sentiments, agreed with my knowledge. I'm am I crazy? I was close enough with my professors. The university at Lehigh is small enough where you get to have more personal connections with your professors, but big enough where it feels like a university. You're not at a small, college, you're at a university, it's large, but like you get to have that one-on-one with certain professors. Talking to my professors, they're like, yeah, I agree. Like that's a flawed system. And there was a professor who really worked in microbiology, and we were talking about like superbugs and things like that. And I was just like, oh my God, like this is crazy. Literally that got my mind thinking of what is the connection here? Like why at my core do I keep getting UTIs? And that was when it was like my UTIs were caused by E. coli. And so I started doing digging and more digging and more digging and more digging. And as I kept digging, I was on Google Scholar reading all these articles, and I found these medical journals, and I found how like urinary tract infections are coming from uropathogenic E. coli most times. And uropathogenic E. coli overgrows in the gut. And that means something, right? And because when you're taking an oral antibiotic for a UTI, you're also destroying the gut microbiome. And the same bacteria that you're trying to kill can thrive in an environment with low diversity. What people don't realize, when you're on so many rounds of antibiotics, the antibiotics can shift your gut microbiome. So if you already got or you're getting chronic or recurring urinary tract infections because there's an overgrowth of E. coli that's in your gut, and then you're taking antibiotics, which is furthering gut dysbiosis, which is furthering vaginal microbiome dysbiosis, which is furthering the disruption in these microbiomes, what you'll see is that, yes, you're reducing the microbial load of E. coli temporarily, but E. coli can grow back because your microbiomes are messed up. Your gut and vaginal microbiomes are now messed up, and the gut can be a reservoir for E. coli to thrive in again because it doesn't have the good bacteria that it needs to thrive. It doesn't have the diversity that it needs to protect itself. It doesn't have the short chain fatty acid production. It doesn't have the things, the qualities that are necessary for a healthy gut to surveillance the area and stop E. coli overgrowth. So you can have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO. You can experience C. diff from being on so many rounds of antibiotic. There's so many different things that can come from that, where there's like bacteria that grows when it shouldn't, but that's because you've wrecked your gut microbiome. And so it's easy for that E. coli to regrow and reseed the urinary tract because you're never solving the microbiome imbalance in the gut and in the vagina. That is really important to know and understand. And that was like the connection that I made, that I was like, oh my God. So all of that's to say that I started studying the vaginal and gut microbiome, the connection, probiotic therapy, and I used my senior design capstone project to study it. And that was like my aha moment. My senior design project was all about probiotic therapeutics for vaginal health. I just fell in love with the science, fell in love with women's health. And I started, thinking of, why is this a problem? Why is women's health fragmented? And I started learning about the dark history of female reproductive health in this country, how we tested on enslaved Black women, or Black girls. They were young girls. They weren't even women. Just learning about the medical racism, the medical misogyny, learning that the system was not made for our bodies. Like all of that just lit a fire under my ass that I was like, I want to change the world. That's what I'm going to do. I continued studying probiotic therapy for vaginal health, for gut health, and started connecting the interconnected systems, the immune system, the vaginal microbiome, hormones, how they're all an interconnected system that are often neglected, right? If you have a UTI, you see a urologist. You're having GI issues, you go and see a GI doctor. You're having vaginal issues, you go see a gynecologist. You're having hormone issues, you go see an endocrinologist. You see an immunologist for your immune system. There's all these different specialties, and women are left cycling through different providers, different products, and conflicting advice that exists on the internet, and everyone is just focusing on one piece of the puzzle. And I was like, no. We need to zoom out and focus on the whole puzzle. Focusing on one piece of the puzzle is not solving or like putting the whole puzzle together. We need to be looking at this as a whole, because when you treat these things independently, you leave women to manage symptoms rather than understanding why the symptom exists in the first place. That's valuable. That is so valuable. If we want to help women to actually fix the problem, we have to stop managing symptoms. We have to get to the root of why the symptom exists. And unfortunately, women's health is treated like women's bodies function in silos, and it doesn't. So if a woman's body does not function in silos, the care that we give them shouldn't either. That's my mission. And so this interconnected biology is something like I care a lot about. And that is why I was like, I need to do something about this. And so I created my probiotics, created with Meraki Co. And I was pitching at events through the entrepreneurship school at Lehigh University. My spring semester of senior year. So I got into the business world literally, it was winter break. And then it was the spring semester. And that's when I pursued my idea with the business school at Lehigh. They don't own like anything for the business, but I went to them for advice because capstone at Lehigh is your spring semester of junior year and then your fall semester of senior year. So by spring semester of fall, I was done with senior design. So I took it upon myself to take my idea after capstone and I wanted to do more with it. And that was where I started pitching my idea, my first probiotic, what you guys now know as With Clarity. I pitched it at the university for like grant prizes so that I could get my LLC, so that I could do like the legal things, so that I could like talk to a formulation scientist, an attorney, and all these things, build my website. I started pitching for grants and I graduated in May of 2022. And then I was a part of Lehigh's Ventures Lab program, which gears up young professionals for entrepreneurship. And I got into the program. I had applied and then got in, and it was just 3 of us. And I was awarded a certain amount of money in grant funding. And that allowed me to manufacture my first batch of inventory for With Clarity. And thus With Clarity, which wasn't called With Clarity at the time, it was called Urinary Vaginal Probiotic Prebiotic for Urinary and Vaginal Health. I had like an insanely long name. It was so funny. I'll insert a picture of the old bottle versus the new bottle. And we are changing the bottle yet again. That started my journey in August of 2022. So when you guys see this, it'll probably be early August. Like I think the first week of August, if not the last Sunday in July. So we're coming up to my 4-year anniversary of With Meraki Co. So this is like perfect timing for this video. I had started it in August, launched my business and my product. And then since then, I've carried that mission of women's bodies don't exist in silos. So neither should the care that we give them, which is why I have this product lineup of healing the gut, healing the immune system, healing the hormones, healing all these things, or caring for these things, if you will. I worked as an engineer for 2 years at a local biopharmaceutical company and ran my business for those first 2 years. So from 2022 to 2024, I was working as a full-time engineer and running my business pretty much full-time. So I worked from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon at my engineering job. And then I would go home, I would shower, I would eat. And by 7 o'clock, I would be at my office and I would work from 7 till 2:30, maybe 3 a.m. I'd go home, go to bed, wake up at 7 in the morning and repeat. So I was getting like 3 hours of sleep every single day. And like, that was my story. And that was my story for 2 years. I did that for 2 years until I was able to walk away. And I walked away from my engineering job. And in June of 2024, I became a full-time founder. So this June marked 2 years since I became a full-time founder, meaning that I was just running With Meraki Co. completely and fully. It's the only thing that I do now. It is my only job, being a founder and a CEO, which is a dream come true. I'm so grateful. And a huge reason why I've been able to do that is because of you guys, because of the people that have supported me on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram. You guys have bought my products and supported the business. You've watched my videos, showed love to my videos, engaged with me, built a community where you believe in me, you believe in my mission, you believe in my products, you trust me, you trust the community, you know that this is a safe space. That's what this is about. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today without you guys. So shout out to you guys for real, because the only reason I'm in the position that I'm in today is because of the audience and the community that I've been able to build. So I love you guys so much. And to be honest, this is probably one of the longest podcast episodes that I've done in a really long time. I don't know how long this episode is, probably like 40 minutes at this point, maybe longer. I'm not sure. That is kind of my journey of how I became a biomedical engineer and then started With Meraki Co. I've talked a little more clearly and like dove a little deeper into how I started With Meraki Co. in the past. I just feel like that's a separate video. So if you want more of a deep dive of my research and that the capstone and that journey, I can always make an episode about that. But this was me becoming a biomedical engineer and then BME turned entrepreneur, founder, CEO type of situation. I hope that this was fun to just listen to. I hope you guys just like have this playing while you're doing your makeup. I hope that you have this playing while you're at work, while you're driving, while you're making yourself a cup of coffee, while you're in a lab doing some work. You got an AirPod in for all my girls in STEM. Like, I hope that this was a fun video to just listen to and feel like you're talking to a big sister, because I always say I'm your biomedical engineering big sister. I hope that you guys love this video. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. And don't forget to wish with Meraki Co. a happy 4-year anniversary this August. Love you guys, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.